On January 28, 2022, two friends were on their usual adventure to the Great Cerro Torre in Argentina. Corrado Pesce, a 41-year-old Italian, and his friend Tomas Aguilo, a 36-year-old Argentinian. The pair had just discovered a new path on the Great Cerro Torre, and it was going to be another great climbing trip for them. Their journey climbing up the mountain was smoother than honey, but their descent turned very sour. An amazing array of 4 mountains makes up the Cerro Torre, located in Argentina, South America. You can also call it Cerro Chalten. Climbing up this mountain isn't child's play at all. It's challenging and laborious. But to overcome the complicated climbing, several trials and errors have been made. As some became successful in their pursuit, some lost their lives doing it. A great piece of news came about the climbing of Cerro Torre when Corrado Pesce found another route, which he believed would be the easiest and fastest route to the peak of the mountain. Tomas Aguilo, his friend, was also with him. The new strategy for climbing was to start on the east face and end on the north face. It will not be as easy as they assumed it would be, but at least it was worth a shot. Corrado, who had several experiences climbing more difficult mountains than this, was very confident about his ability to push through this and make another resounding testimony. To mention but a few aspects of his mountaineering background, he climbed the tougher paths in the Alps, the Himalayas, and Patagonia. In 2014, he climbed the Derek de la Matarud, 3,609 feet on the north face of the Grand Yaros Mont Blanc. In 2015, he climbed the Rolling Stones route of 3,609 feet, also on the north side of the Grand Yaros Mont Blanc. In 2016, he climbed the insurmountable star route of close to 4,265 feet on the Bhagirathi Mountain in the Indian Himalayas. In 2019, he climbed the Psycho vertical route of 3,117 feet on the south side of Tony Egger with his friend Tomas and 4 other friends. With these great records, Corrado believed the newly found route to the Cerro Torre will be achievable, even though there are possible challenges along the way. As they thought the route could be the fastest, they believed that within a few hours they would get to the mountain's apex. But they still kept in mind Cerro Torre's eminent weather conditions and terrifying height of about 10,262 feet. The game must be played, and the goal must be accomplished. Nothing must stop them, no matter how great or small. On January 26, 2022, the two buddies started their formidable trip to the vicious Cerro Torre. It was a delight for the two friends who spent years together on various adventures. They were in a stunning and remote landscape, but they enjoyed every moment of their journey up the mountain. They took quality gear with them, including rock canes, padded coats, gloves, socks, and climbing boots. The preparation was perfect. It was not unexpected for them to experience a rough ascent and poor weather. They were both prepared for the challenges that lay ahead of them. With great dexterity in climbing, the older Corrado led the ascent, and Tomas admired him for it. Although they were both confident in their journey, a little fear was creeping into their hearts. The fear of bad weather was capable of throwing them off the rock, but little did they know that they were not the only ones climbing the rock at the moment. When they got to about 8,999 feet, they met with some Italian climbers, Bordella, Bacci, and Giacomo, who were also heading to the peak of the mountain. The joy of meeting fellow adventurers and rubbing minds together as they went made them all determined to get to their finishing line. They were no longer ready to give up. Corrado was still the one leading the new team with great enthusiasm. At about 6 p.m. on the following day, they all realized their dreams. They arrived at the peak of the mountain. It was a great achievement for these climbers, though it was one of the toughest climbs they've ever made. As soon as they got to the peak of the mountain, Corrado suggested to his friend Tomas that the best time for them to leave the mountain was that very night. His years of experience as a climber made him come to this decision, knowing that the rocks will still be in better condition at night than during the day, when they will likely start collapsing. Tomas agreed to his decision, but when they took the matter to the friends they'd met, they weren't interested in returning that night. They were very tired, and the only thing they had left to do that night wasn't dinner, but rest. They also needed to process their achievement. Corrado understood them, but he and his friend decided to pass the night on the mountain and leave early the following morning before dawn. On January 28, 2022, before dawn, Corrado and Tomas left the other members of the group as they proceeded through the southeastern ridge, the compressor route. As they continued their descent, Corrado began to feel something in his heart but had no time to attend to those feelings, as he was just curious about getting back down to a safe place. The pair continued down through the dark, cold weather, believing they would get to solid ground before noon. All of a sudden, they heard rocks rattling from a distance. Corrado stopped for a moment and signaled to Tomas to also stop. On the frozen mountain, the two waited for more sounds, but there were none, so they continued their journey. By the time Corrado decided to get hold of the rock to support himself, there were great rumblings. At first, he was dumbfounded. He couldn't fathom why there were rumblings in the rock, but the reality of the danger he and his friend were about to face soon dawned on him. Rime mushrooms began to fall from the top of the mountain. Torrents of rocks, snow, and ice were collapsing on them. They knew they were about to be crushed by this disaster without any likely means of escape. There was no place to hide from the calamity coming upon them. They both took a deep breath and braced themselves as they protected their faces with their hands. This isn't going to have any impact on protecting them, but what else could they do? The avalanche descended upon them with an awful noise, and they were both seriously injured. The two were separated by the rocks, snow, and ice that had fallen on them. They could hardly see each other. Tomas, in serious pain, screamed for rescue because his condition could go worse if he doesn't receive help anytime soon. He was badly injured, but could still move a bit. Corrado, on the other hand, was entombed in the avalanche on the other side of the rock. His injuries were worse than his friend's. He could no longer move any of his body parts, and he could hardly speak or cry out for help. He lay helpless in serious agony, believing that someone would come to his aid. Tomas called out for Corrado, but he was not sure if he was still breathing wherever he was. So he decided to call for help, but then realized that their equipment was gone with the avalanche. He was only left with his headlamp. As he took up his headlamp, someone down at the base of the rock spotted the SOS signal from his headlamp. 10 members of a group were summoned for a 2-hour hike to the base of the glacier near Norway's camp to investigate the accident. Alcocer and a German alpinist, Thomas Huber, were 2 of the 10 members of the group. Huber and 2 other friends journeyed beyond the high camp across the broken glacier to the bottom of the east wall. They aimed to rescue the living victims of the accident, especially the person who gave the headlight signal. They searched in every way possible, but no one was found. On Friday evening, about 5 p.m., Della Bordella's team had completed their 30 descents down the southeast ridge, where they met Alcocer and the other rescue teams that were searching for Tomas at the bottom of the wall. When Della heard about the disaster, he immediately used his drone to pinpoint Tomas's location. After a few minutes, the drone located Tomas, and they quickly began the journey for his rescue. Della led the rescue team through the ascent, though he was exhausted from the previous climb. He was eager to help his new friend out. They continued in the dark and cold midnight in search of Tomas. They found him at the exact location pinpointed by the drone, and some members of the rescue team started descending with him while others proceeded to look for Corrado. The storm was rising, but they never gave up the search. They waited for any sign of Corrado on the triangular snowfield until 3 a.m. The temperature of the mountain began to drop, and a great wind was howling against them. When Della began to have hallucinations because of his tiredness, the search team decided to start their descent. Tomas was taken by helicopter to the nearest hospital for proper treatment, but Corrado was unfortunate. They still couldn't find him, even though several drones were sent to search for him. They knew that with that much time spent in the avalanche, there was little chance of Corrado's survival. After more than 11 hours, they got sight of him through some of the images from a drone that flew close to the accident scene. They saw his body lying 164 feet below the place where he passed the night. He had slipped off due to a lack of protection. He had given up the ghost due to his numerous injuries and the cold. Corrado Pesce, the great alpinist, left this world as a fighter and champion, which he truly was. He was a real legend in the mountaineering community. His family mourned their beloved brother, Corrado Pesce, and said a final goodbye to him. We would like to thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed watching, take a dive on the like and subscribe buttons and hit the bell icon so you get notified when we come back with another exciting story.